thrown by Zoom because, but great. Harry, we're recording already, or?
Yep, I've started recording.
Okay, fantastic. So just so everyone knows, we're recording this show and tell, and I think we'll be sharing it out via some local digital channels so people can access it, and also sending it out to people who have signed up via the Eventbrite after this date, for anyone that missed it. And I think we'll start. It seems like there's quite a lot of people already, which is great. So hi everyone. This is the first Open Referral UK beta show and tell, which is very exciting. My name is Elsa. I'm the project lead for this project. I'm also the product manager, so responsible for prioritizing our development work. Yes, as I mentioned, we'll be recording today's session and sharing it afterwards, so please turn your camera off if you don't want to be recorded. If you have any questions that don't get answered during this meeting, or would prefer to email them rather than ask them in a public way, feel free to drop me an email. You can see my email address at the top of the slide. And this is our agenda for today. So this is our first show and tell. So we're going to spend a decent amount of time introducing the project and talking about the data standard. And then we'll spend a good amount of time for questions as well. Because there's a good number of us, if everyone who isn't talking could please mute themselves, and please feel free to unmute during the question part. That's the fun part. So yeah, now with that said and done, I'm actually going to hand over to Gavin.
Hi, thank you, Elsa. I'm Gavin Mcguire. I'm head of service design at Snook and also directing on this project. Very quickly, just a word or two about Snook. We're a research, design, and digital agency working predominantly in the public and third sectors. And we use design to tackle complex challenges in a strategic and very human-centered way. And our partner on this project is Poorism. I'm going to now pass over to Mike to introduce Poorism.
Yes, so Poorism's the other half of the team. Poorism's an SME that's got a long history of working with local government and helping them share and use data, particularly open data according to open standards. We're partners of the Local Government Association and run their LG Inform Plus suite of tools, which processes a couple of billion items of open data and makes them available through machine readable and other interfaces. And we develop a lot of tools to help people publish their own data according to standards.
Cool. So you're really getting round the houses today, getting introduced to lots of different people. But I'm Niall. I'm quite new to the project, but I'm a full stack developer on the project, and I'm on the Snook side of things. So I'm just going to introduce you to a few of the people that are working on the team. So we've already heard from Elsa, who's the product manager and the project lead for this stuff. And we've heard from Gavin, who's the head of service design at Snook, but he's the project director. Harry, who's on the Snook Yellow account today, who's hosting the meeting, is doing the delivery management stuff. Yeah, Ananda has done a really cracking job on the interaction design so far, and Anne Cook's been doing a lot of the content thus far. Also on the technical side with me are Yemi and Andy, and the other people we've got on the Snook side are Olu's done a really cracking job with the research, and he's going to talk through some stuff later on, and Robin's been doing the comms. On the Poorism side, we've got Mike, who we've already heard from already, and Dom is another developer working on the project. So that's the internal team. And then in terms of the partners that we're working with, we're working with Paul Brewer from Aden and Worthing Council, who I think are very involved in the project, Nick Parker from Leeds, Ben Unsworth from Essex County Council, and Paul Davids from the Sedgemoor District Council are all very involved with the project. There's also Chris Thorpe from CAST. I don't think can make it along today, but they're doing a lot of like digital for good type work, which has been really helpful. We've also got from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, we've got Matt Whithill, and from the Local Government Association, Tim Adams has also been involved. Tim Adams. So.
Thanks, Niall. So let's start by just taking an overview of what the project's trying to achieve. Our one primary goal is to drive adoption of the Open Referral UK standards. So we'll start by saying a bit about what that is and why it's important before we get into the details of what we're delivering. So what is Open Referral? Well, in a sentence, a consistent way of recording and sharing information about services. And by services, I mean sort of human services, community services, things like care at home, bicycle maintenance, meditation, women's support groups, which are typically recorded in a host of different public and private sector directories around the country. And the standard is about how we can share information on such things, machine to machine, such that that information can be reused. And the standard talks about how that information can be structured such that people best understand it. So why do we need that standard? Well, at present, there are lots of directories around and they follow no particular format, and typically information is hard to share and a lot of effort's wasted. We came across one council which had got 40 or 13 different directories in different parts of the council, with nobody quite understanding or wanting to trust somebody else's directory, so they created their own. Came across another council which manually copied its service directory into its customer relationship management system for prescribing services. And they're the kind of inefficiencies that we want to tackle. Essentially, we want to put services in a format with sufficiently rich data such that people can find the right services for them. And that means going well beyond what a Google search would tell you, but telling you things like, you know, are you eligible for a service? You know, what's the cost? How far away is it? That sort of thing, which you only get with properly structured and well-maintained information. So Open Referral is designed to reduce some of those inefficiencies that we come across. And the goal is that you can develop, gather data about each service once and reuse that multiple times, and through tools we're providing and through an iterative process, improve the quality of that data and share it in multiple different ways so it can be used by official directories and it can be used by innovators for a whole variety of purposes. And we get over this issue of data belonging to one organization dealing just with its boundaries. So if, for instance, you're on the boundary of two councils, data can be brought together in one location to serve you. And we've already got lots of councils looking at communicating with their neighbours to bring in data according to the standard in one consistent directory. So the message is gather data to a high quality, reduce costs from inefficient information, or indeed from information that is gathered multiple times that you can't be sure of. So we're not starting from scratch here. The Open Data Referral UK standard has a good pedigree going right back to 2014, and the Open Referral standard, which was developed in the United States and is used now internationally for systems which refer people to services. And we're also building on work that the LGA led back in 2017-18, working with a simpler standard for services in Lancashire and North Yorkshire. And it's learning from those two projects that in 2019, Snook brought together in the Open Community Discovery Project, looking at what the requirements were and how we could best meet them with a UK-based standard. And that work was picked up by the DCMS project to address loneliness run by the LGA in 2019-20, where iStand UK formally extended the Open Referral UK standard to make it appropriate to UK needs. And that's been piloted then with Blackburn with Darwin, Bristol, Elmbridge and Hull councils and their suppliers. Following on from that, as part of an Open Community Alpha, Bucks Council did some work, and that has resulted in a family services directory for Buckinghamshire developed by FutureGov, which complies with the standard. So here we are now at the beta, which is taking all of that learning and putting it in a structure whereby it can be used formally. Along the bottom of that screen, you see a list of private sector suppliers who've already implemented the standard: PlaceCube, FutureGov and Public Consulting Group who've implemented it in their service directories, Vidavir and Doc and T that develop independent service finders that work with anyone that complies with the standard. And Wellaware is a good example of a company that can gather data that is compliant and of a high quality. So what you'll hear of now is the work we're doing to put all of that in a package so you can present a case for it to senior managers and you can go ahead and implement it in a consistent way.
Yeah, so I'm Harry. I'm a delivery manager here at Snook. So just a bit about the vision for Beta. So we have three. It's been split into 3 pillars. So the first one is kind of ensuring that there's a compelling digital presence and the onboarding is easy. So that's starting from the awareness of Open Referral UK, and then understanding what its benefits are, and then actually then adopting it supported by all the digital, all the information that will be provided in the solution. The second pillar is some form of ongoing program of engagement as well. So we're already producing a comms, an engagement plan, but it's the continuation of that. It's carrying out the actions to ensure that the work to support this keeps going, continuing to generate interest and buy-in from the top down. So from those decision makers within the authorities and organizations, down all the way down to those are actually be carrying out more of the technical development side of things, so the developers or the database administrators as well. And the third pillar is making sure that we want to assure the long-term future as well of Open Referral UK, and so we need to set in place some form of governance structure that's easy, that is sustainable, and that is lightweight and fairly straightforward. So currently, the work that's taken place to support Open Referral UK is being done by Snook and Poorism, but that isn't a long-term solution that will be there in the future. So we need to make sure that the right people are coming together to facilitate we can be there to facilitate the discussions, but not to actually decide what should be happening with it. But usually governance standards are shared across a few organizations sometimes, so like the NHS or MHCLG or local authorities. So that's where we've seen some some of these standards taking success. So this is a high-level plan of the work that we're doing. So we're currently coming towards the end of Sprint 3, and we've split all the work up into user research. So that's conducting interviews, down to there's some development tools as well that would be useful for the organizations to adopt. There's also a website being built and updated where these dev tools will be held, and where users can be pointed to where we can help raise the awareness and where all the information will be. There's the comms as well. So we understood that comms is a big piece to ensure that the work we're doing is well communicated in the industry with the right people, and just making sure that they're all aware of it as well. And then the governance side of things as well, to make sure that that we're iterating as we go progress through the project as well. And this sorry, that's all.
Hi, I'm Olu. I'm the user researcher on this phase of the project. I'm just going to take you through what we've learned so far. So we've decided to go for stakeholder interviews, mainly just to understand stakeholders' needs, the pain points, and the opportunities to aid the main goal of the project, which is to drive adoption of Open Referral UK. We've interviewed key stakeholders to uncover how we can improve the standard itself, and how to improve the website and create a compelling digital presence. Yeah, I think I already spoke about the purpose, so I'm going to move on to who we've spoken to. So we've engaged with stakeholders from 3 local authorities. We've got a couple of suppliers who have already worked on Open Referral UK with their clients. And we've spoken to 2 members of the NHS, mainly people who are involved with a pilot program at Enfield local authority. So these are the stakeholder groups we have spoken to. We try to cover as much as possible. We've spoken to data custodians, digital catalysts who's led digital transformation for their clients. We've spoken to a standards designer as well as service commissioners. So these are the questions we're asking our participants for the interviews. Just trying to get an understanding of how they become aware of Open Referral UK and what they think we should do to raise awareness in order to promote adoption across the public sector in the country. There are reasons for adopting Open Referral UK in the first place, as well as the challenges they've encountered on their way, on their adoption journey. Also, what they think could be deterring others from adopting the standard and using the standard. And lastly, what sort of information they would like to see on an Open Referral UK website. These are just some of the questions. So the plan is to continue to engage with stakeholders to get them involved throughout the development and design and research development and design stage of the project. The reason being is to continue to test our hypotheses and validate it and conduct more research and improve as we go along. So on awareness, as one of the main areas we've worked on, the insight there is 100% of our participants found out about Referral UK by word of mouth. So we need to explore, other various avenues of spreading the news, including the website that we're working on. So when our participants were asked, what should we do to raise awareness of Open Referral UK, these are some of the responses we got from them, showcasing the benefits and opportunities that the adoption of Open Referral UK provides and presents, communicating with, using, a non-technical languages to communicate with a wider community, also targeting key stakeholders who make the ultimate decisions to fund this transformation and this change. And on the right side of the slide, you see some of the quotes from our users. I'll go for the one in the middle, which says, no postal local authority showcase, this will help. So, of course, if there are some local authorities to showcase, it will drive people to adopt. Thank you, sir. On challenges, people just generally find it difficult to sell the idea to the leaders in their communities or the organizations, simply because they believe there's a gap in knowledge. People just don't understand what open data standards are and what it does. So the actionable insight there will be to provide information about open data standards and tie that into Open Referral UK. And yeah, we're exploring many avenues to do that. Thank you, sir. So when they were asked what challenges they encountered on the journey, some of the challenges are leaders not being interested, as mentioned earlier, and also data quality assurance. People are skeptical if data they will be accessing or consuming would be of the highest quality possible. And on the right side, you can see some of the user quotes. I'll go for the second one. Suppliers are a challenge. They have paid lip service, but yeah, they want to charge a lot of what it costs them to actually, transform and apply the changes and implement the changes onto their clients. It's a business risk. So some of the our clients, what they believe is deterring people, and even some of the some of the participants that we've spoken to that haven't started, adoption or begun the journey. They just think, there's low visibility of organizations that have adopted it. They need to see something. They need to see a case study or, a real life use case of people who have already gone on the journey so they can learn from that. And ultimately they think it requires a huge investment to apply to implement the changes. Thanks. So the most notable one from the answers we got when we asked what might be affecting or slowing down the adoption pace is no governance in place. People just generally think, how do we know if people are actually compliant with the standard itself? And also, there's been conversations about no-based taxonomies. People kind of use different taxonomies, which could pose a lot of problems with implementation and complying with the standard itself. So on to the right, you'll see some user quotes as well. Additional cost would be an issue, which is just general across the board. Thanks, Elsa. So these are some of the things that came back when our participants were asked what they would like to see on Open Referral UK website. They'd like to see the benefits. They'd like to see the benefits of Open Referral UK. They want to see real-world case studies to be able to, to take it back to the leaders in their community and be able to convince them and gain their buy-in. They want to see also the feedback from others who have done it. So it's an ongoing thing, as mentioned earlier by Harry, engagement after this phase of the project. So if you look at the user quote on this one, which is quite comprehensive. So I think it's a valid proposition. The main thing is I want to see a website that doesn't just speak to data people who love this data stuff. So you can have your geeky corner for data people, but also, what is the purpose of this thing? So if one is interested, what do you actually need to start making changes internally? Thanks, Elsa. So we have gone for the high priority user stories here. These are directly coined from the insight and from the research findings. So the first one is, as a user who wants to adopt Open Referral UK, I need to be able to learn about the standard from a trusted source so I can gain a full understanding. Again, that ties back to the work being done on Open Referral UK website. Second, as a user who wants to adopt Open Referral UK, I need an easy way to explain the general concept of open data standards so that I can get buy-in from decision makers. I think that pretty much speaks for itself. Next slide, please. Thanks. And then we've got another one here, says, as a user who wants to adopt Open Referral UK, and then an example of another organization who has adopted the standard so that I can see the implementation journey, which ties back to one of the deterrents that could be, discouraging people from adopting the standard. Also, as a non-technical user who wants to adopt Open Referral UK, I need to easily find information about the benefits of the standards in a non-technical way. Again, using non-technical language. As we found, people hear data standard and they think it's technical and they just don't want to bother with it. So yeah, I think that's it from me. Thanks, Elsa.
I think Yemi, you're up next. So I guess I'll change into the next slide. So this section is to talk about the work that we're actually starting to do on the beta, which is first and foremost developing a website, although not the only part of the project.
Okay, so I'm Yemi. I'm the principal developer at Snook, working on this project as well. So earlier on, as part of our research, one of the outcomes of that was splitting our audience into two main groups. The first group being the primary audience, who are the commissioners, the data custodians in local authorities, and also software developers who will actually implement or help implement the tools, as well as service directory providers. And the second group that we identified will then be those that would benefit from the implementation of these data standards. Elsa, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so where are we at the moment? Currently, looking at our high-level user story map that Olu spoke about a little earlier on. Now we're in sprint 3, and in this sprint currently we're working mainly around the website, the foundations of the website, including the information architecture, and just working out a general structure for the website. And then in the upcoming sprints, we'll look at all the different areas, and that will focus more around the content. And then further along, we'll then also look at some of the tools. Some of these tools are already existing, and we'll be enhancing those tools in the coming weeks. Thank you, Elsa. That's me done.
Hi, I'm Ananda. I'm the interaction designer on this project, and I've been working on the website with Anne, who's our content designer, and the whole team. So as you can see from the research, basically there's a need for more information on the website, and there's a need for this information to be a bit less technical. But having this information just thrown onto there could actually not be as effective if we don't make sure that it's properly organized and the terminology is correct, so that people understand what we're showing them. So that's where the information architecture comes in. So as you can see, I'll talk to it at a very high level. We've got some sections around kind of at a very basic level, what is this thing and what are the aims and the vision for Open Referral UK? And then we've got a section that goes deeper into how this thing actually works. So we're talking about open data and open data standards at a high level, and then moving more into the benefits for how that relates to communities and services and actual end users. And that then comes into kind of more specific use cases and the data structure and how the data structure actually supports those, again, with real examples. And then that helps to explain how the data standard actually solves real world problems. We also want to get in the how it works section a mention of how this relates to the Open Referral International Standard, and it's not just another standard. And then again, another high level area is then around how to adopt. So we're talking about the high level vision, what this actually is and how it works, and then how you might go about adopting this. So within there, we've got steps to adopt Open Referral UK, and that would be looking at just the key steps for, depending on who you are, how you would actually engage with this. Obviously, that's quite different between somebody who's a kind of a key decision maker and then a software developer who's actually trying to implement this technically. And we'd also like to highlight and showcase some information around our community and the people that are already on this adoption journey. And then that also leads into case studies. As we've mentioned before, that's quite a key thing that we keep hearing back from the user research that's going to be really important. And then also a high level section just around the governance. So for people to have trust in the standard and that it's going to move forwards and keep up in the future, it needs to have that governance structure that is another pillar that we're working on. And of course, the website will need to explain that so that people understand that. And all of that is before we even get to the actual documentation and tools that help developers specifically to implement in a technical way. So as you can see, the kind of main focus is around telling that wider story. And of course, the documentation and tools, they've already been developed in alpha, and we're hoping if we can to get to spend some time on those as well. And I think some work's been done on those already, certainly in terms of updating those tools. So on top of the information architecture, we're also starting to look at the wireframes for the website. So if you just go to the next slide, thanks. So the wireframes bring together the navigation, content, and layout. And we're focusing on the home page and the site-wide navigation first and foremost, because this gives us our best chance to test our main assumption, which is around this fact that people seem to want a more or a less technical overview of Open Referral UK. And we can also test out that information architecture and the kind of a first draft of some content and the tone of voice and how we're actually talking about this thing. So if you move on to the next section, looking at both the information architecture and the wireframes, we'll be going towards doing some user research and user testing in the next sprint. So testing the information architecture, looking at tree testing. So thinking about can users find what they need, and is the naming and structure of the categories clear? And then on the wireframes, doing some user testing with clickable prototypes to find out really what do users expect to see on the homepage. Is the homepage as it stands in our wireframes communicating effectively, and can users navigate using that kind of site-wide navigation, which is a manifestation of the information architecture? Can they navigate effectively? So those are the things we're focusing on first on the design side of things.
Hello, I'm going to talk to you about the case study form. So this is what we prepared, and we decided we were going to trial it with leads, and we've already had a really quick response. So we'll be having a look at that later today, and then we'll reach out to leads and ask if they have any feedback on the style or the process of filling out this form. From a quick glance, I think we got a lot of information, which is really useful. So I'll be speaking with Elsa later on our next steps for that. And then once we've had that conversation, we will then share this wider and trial it with some of the other local authorities that have already adopted the standard and get a greater picture of how successful this form is, and if the questions are gathering the key messages that potential future adopters would like to hear. So again, as everyone's highlighted, the case studies seem to be quite a crucial element. So we're really looking forward to moving a step forward with that and seeing how it develops. Over to who's next?
It's me. Or actually, it's all of you. So we've just talked for half an hour. We've covered quite a bit. So just as a recap, like, what is Open Referral UK? Why is it important? The story of how we got here today to this beta project. A lot of insights about current feelings around the standards, challenges to adoption, potential incentives to adopt, and then some of our plans as a team. We have lots of time for questions and discussions, so please feel free to unmute yourself, put your hand up, type in the chat. We'd really love to hear from any of you with your questions.
Hi, it's Paul Davidson. Can I start off with some questions?
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
My first question is, where do you put your hand up here? I can't find the button. Right, never mind. Okay, picking up on what we were hearing about what Amanda was saying about the website. It sounds as if what the website won't be is a kind of discussion forum chat place for people to discover each other and and chat their way through this. So I'm just checking that. And is there a kind of a Twitter channel or some kind of mechanism by which we can have a discussion around that? I've also got a question. How do we hear about supplier adoption? And if not adoption, just supplier, which suppliers are brought into this and how are they getting on with stuff? How would we hear about that? Because that didn't seem to feature in the sitemap either. And then there was earlier on a line that common vocabularies seem to be a barrier. So is there something in the project that is about bringing councils together and coming to some conclusions about what the right national vocabularies will be that will make this build into a joined up ecosystem based on this standard? So there's three questions there.
Okay, I might have to get you to remind me for some
right.
of the later ones, but let's start with number one.
So the first one was
yeah, I got number one. I can answer.
Okay.
So yeah, we are definitely focusing on an informative website that people can read, take the information from, and share as the MVP, because I think without that, the forum makes less sense. We've heard quite a bit of feedback about wanting to discuss. Actually, we heard something from Annie before as well via email about this. I see that in the chat. And I think it's something we'll look to implement in some sort of, MVP way. If there's another tool we could use, it's definitely on the table, but it's also not committed to, which is all in the spirit of agile working. And one thing we definitely need to bear in mind for this is what will the forum be vibrant, or will it become stale and then could put off potential adoptees? So it's kind of a question, and it's on our table, but we don't have the answers yet. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in. If anyone on the project team ever wants to chime in, just feel free.
Yeah, it's something we're looking at, and we've been discussing a number of different options, a forum being one of them, a Slack channel, some kind of knowledge hub that could grow with the project. And then you've got different channels like GitHub issues and mailing lists and newsletters. So it's on our radar, but we're just looking at all the options at this point. But thanks.
And thanks, Greg, for sharing the Open Referral US one. Second question was about supplier adoption, right, Paul?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think like this is very important for us as well. Like on the target audience for the website, we very much had what we're calling service directory providers and software developers. They're another audience for our case study. We started with leads, but for the website and the case studies to be successful, I think we really need supplier case studies as well, showing that, hopefully it won them new business and was a good business decision to implement on the supplier side. And then, yeah, I think for the content, we're hoping the content appeals to everyone. Like suppliers are one of our primary audience, but I don't know if we've identified anything specifically other than the case studies yet. If anyone ever has any other thoughts, again, feel free to chime in. Does that help, Paul? Do you think there's anything else we should be doing?
No, that sounds all right. As I said, it's about confidence comes from just knowing how suppliers are getting on with this, and whether they're all working towards it, or in fact, whether there's only 2 or 3 that are working towards it. So just some way of keeping that in the loop is what I was looking for there. But as you say, supplier case studies would be, if we welcome them, that would be fantastic.
I think David has a question as well.
Yeah, I saw some questions in the chat. Maybe we'll do some of those, and then we'll go back to your number 3 later, Paul.
Okay.
So David, you were the first one in the chat, and you mentioned involving citizens in the research. Could you elaborate a little bit on what you mean?
Yes, certainly. We do an awful lot of work in local clusters with local authorities and third sector organisations, principally working with frontline teams and citizens. And all of the work we do, Better Service by Design activity, always involves engaging the citizen as an active participant in either service redesign or transformation. And so much of it these days is about making data flow safely and securely. And there is a really interesting perspective you always get about data when you involve citizens. And referrals are at the very heart of improving public services and supporting some of the most challenged people in society gain access to the services they need. And we learn every single time, whether it's providing help for people with cancer, or whether or not it's actually just delivering debt advice or providing social service support referral activity. By asking them about the data, and even about a standard like this, you get an amazing perspective about what they're happy to share, not happy to share, and how, and get their awareness of these types of activities. And I think if the citizens want something to be reduced in terms of friction, effort, risk and cost, just like the frontline teams do, you might find greater support from those organizations that should be implementing this. And we look to support these sorts of standards within the personal data stores that we equip people with that interface to these core systems. So I just wondered, was there any conversation with citizens?
So in the previous research studies, there has been quite some involvement and research on the citizen side, so either for considering them as service users, or yeah, I guess that's what we're mostly talking about in this case. There was quite some research in the discovery and the alpha phase. We haven't focused so much on it for beta, just because the specific problem that, there's the standard as a whole, there's what the standard supports, and the really specific problem we're tackling in our beta at the moment is how to drive adoption, which is our citizens are a little bit less tightly involved in, but I think it's really a good point to always mention it, and it's something we could look to do more in this beta as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. What else have we got in the chat? Yeah, so Annie, you had a question about onboarding and adoption. Would you like to speak to your question a little bit? I could also read it out if you prefer. I see you're on video now.
Yeah, no, I think for me, I'm just thinking adopting the standards is the first step. If we do that and then we manage to get our partners and the community voluntary sector to do that as well, then what happens beyond that? Who owns the data set, and how do we govern that, and how do we make sure we've got quality assurance, and all of those things just concern me. And I think, is that going to be part of this adoption piece and the guidance that you're producing, or is this work really about the technical side and just implementing the standards, and we need to figure the rest out?
Yeah, I mean, all of these concerns are like really important for us to tackle for adoption, because ultimately it's not just about how you execute on this technically. If you have these concerns at Somerset, you won't start the adoption journey. So like 100% really important. It's hard to say like precisely how many pieces of documentation we will have and what exactly will be on the website, whether they would tick all of these boxes, but this is input that we're taking in. I think what this also does highlight is, every council or local authority or organization looking to adopt will have a unique set of questions, and so the website itself most likely will not be enough. Like, we can always answer some questions there, but there'll be another level of detail that either we connect people to other organizations, via a forum or something else. We have other support mechanisms, but there are a lot of operational and not data related questions that we'll need to
perhaps answer. I could chip in that. Yeah, I'm expecting our guidance to cover, yes, adoption of the standard in a directory that is compliant with it, but also how to ensure you get good quality open data. Taking that on to merging multiple sets of data, say from neighbouring authorities, is something that the current site has some discussion on, and a lot more work needs to go on with that. I know Paul Davison and others have considered this, and also CAST, who are involved in the project, are looking at how you can delegate ownership of records and ensure a high quality of records, and that things are only input once. And I'm not actually expecting this phase of the project to tackle that, but provide some guidance along the way, but define this ongoing governance and maintenance structure that Harry mentioned. That will provide a forum for addressing these issues amongst people who implement this in the real world, and solve problems like how you're bringing in data from multiple councils to share in a meaningful way. So I think this project will go a little way towards that, and hopefully it will provide structures whereby discussions can go on and people can exchange real life experiences with that.
And I think what you're mentioning around CAST, Mike, is quite relevant to the next question in the chat as well, which is around, Nick asked a question about user research beyond local authorities and with third sector partners, but it's not just user research, it's also, as Annie mentioned, the collecting of the data about the community and voluntary sector, and that's pretty overlapping with what the work that Chris is doing, right, Mike? I know he's not on the call. I think you're on mute there.
I clicked twice on the mute button. CAST is doing some work with voluntary organisations to allow them to input their own details in a in a directory that will be compliant with the standard, and allow them to delegate maintenance of records to trusted parties. And there's a lot of good learning from that. So we're not just talking about things from local authorities.
Yeah, he actually messaged our team just today saying he has some good research from his project, and that's something we can maybe share with this audience or in the future show and tell as well once he shared that with us. But yeah, their sector partners are super important for this. So yeah, I see Ben had a suggestion about some form of template for commissioners or buyers. That's something we've talked about as well. So it's pretty cool to see something that we will maybe reach out to Greg as well about what you've shared, but it's definitely on our radar. And then I see a question about, are you interested in talking to non-local authority systems looking to consume this data? Could the person that wrote that question, are they interested in sharing a bit more context? I'm pretty interested.
Hi. So I work for NHS Digital, a product manager, and we are trying to consume data from local authority directories, and currently looking at how our data structure maps to local authority directory data structures, and obviously very interested in the Open Referrals project, because that can provide a certain standardization that we can also work to. And it's whether you really want to talk to us about our approach and how we're attempting to use the Open Referral data structure and the information that you've provided about it.
Yeah, we would love to talk to you. Definitely. I think we've had a few conversations with the NHS, but it would more is better. We've been talking to Dennis. I don't know if he's on this call.
Yes, there's a core data set for social prescribing coming out of the personalization team in NHSX. And I know that you have so many disparate teams, and we've been talking to them a lot, and they've put together a draft specification for people developing social prescribing software, and is suggesting use of the Open Referral standard. Separately, the Leeds loop work that we've talked about, and they may want to talk about it more themselves, has that NHS component. And yeah, it is definitely not just local authority services, but services coming from multiple providers and with data consumed by multiple providers. And we see that one of the main target users of the data is people prescribing non-clinical solutions through social prescribing. So would love to talk more about that RUHA3, if we can put a name to it, maybe communicate sometime offline.
Yeah, it's Ruth Hammond. So my system isn't public facing, it's for healthcare professionals. So it has a slightly different requirement to NHS UK. So definitely we would love to talk to you.
Great, yeah, that's perfect. We'll reach out to us. We have email addresses scattered through the deck. So either way, I'm sure we'll find each other. Nicola, would you like to read out your question?
Hi there. Yeah, my question was around how you're structuring the adoption part of it, and whether you're looking at both incremental adoption as well as kind of part of whole system reviews within councils, picking up on the point that if councils feel overwhelmed by the idea of having to conduct an entire system review, are there ways to sort of sell it in at particular service levels, and then expanding that out when they're seeing that it's working and proving useful?
Yeah, it's not something, at least I have, I don't think we've talked about too much on the content side. We haven't got to the level of defining exactly what we talk about steps to adoption and what we would put. I think it would be quite interesting to cover that as a case study, actually, if you're working on it in Lambeth, because it's good to show different models of adoption.
Yeah, I think we've identified kind of two levels of adopter. There's the immediate service manager that just wants to get something dealt with, and then there's kind of an integration person, someone like Paul Davidson in his council, and I think lots of the project stakeholders who take a wider view of integration of services across the council, which is the digital declaration approach. And any council that's signed up to the digital declaration is effectively committed to this interoperable approach that's supported the standard, but it's one thing signing it, another thing presenting what that is in a meaningful way. And I'm hoping that our materials will address that.
Dominic, you have a question?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm Dom from FutureGov. We just launched a service directory product that we spent the last year or so building based on the Open Referral UK standard. And yeah, I guess one of the struggles along the way was we worked quite closely with the sort of council staff who would be like running the directory, and they, for the most part, kind of weren't that interested in the data standard. We were kind of migrating from an old tool they used, and their data was a big mess. But yeah, I guess how do you kind of, it's quite a vague question, I guess, really, but how do you kind of sell the benefits to people who are running the services when they're mostly just interested in their own local authority and struggle to see like the benefits of a nationwide standardized data set?
That's a tough question. I mean, anyone have a short answer?
Dominic, I think that's sort of the question when Nicola was asking in a different way, and it is a question of getting that wider vision of the digital declaration understood. And I'd actually like, you know, maybe Ben Unsworth, when he was at Bucks, might want to comment on that approach, because Ben obviously gets it, but the service managers, you know, take some persuasion, and there is a gap there. But we have in our stakeholder team people who do understand the importance of standards, and I guess it's getting that down from them to individual service managers, that you know, you can't deprioritize the interoperability.
Yeah, it's a super hard question, Dom. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for asking it, and nice work on getting the Bucks thing over the line as well. It's a super piece of work, and yeah, it was hard. We need to come at it from a bunch of levels. Like the fight we were having there, I fight's a bit strong, but we were trying to help a team learn all about user-centered design, about kind of internet era tech, and we were throwing in this thing about standards as well, which was just another level of abstract that they had to face off against. And rightly, from their perspective, what they wanted was a way of helping their service users find information, and they didn't really care about those other things. And so the kind of art in the middle of all of that is trying to find that little common space where we can help teams like that understand that actually standards help drive better curation of data, and it has a local impact, and that will help help them develop and deliver better services. There's potentially getting better data out for commissioners out the other end to help them spot gaps in provision. So we have to sell a much bigger picture. But you're right, too often it falls on one person who's slightly nerdily obsessed with this stuff, which in Bucks was me. I left and then nobody really cared anymore. And so we need to get it in a bit deeper into the organization. So the things we're starting to look at in Essex, recognizing why this is hard, is how do we influence procurement? So our procurement colleagues need to understand what data standards are, and how, when we're looking at certain types of technologies, we need to have a conversation about the adoption of standards and make it almost a pass-fail question where it's appropriate. If we think there's a mature market who can take a standards-based approach to some of these things, then we can have that as a pass-fail question. And so that there are levers, and they're pretty strong sometimes. We just need folks to start joining some of these dots. And I think back to this piece of work, the challenge here is, how does this work we're talking about today make that easier? Because I've got the benefit of having been nerding out on this for the last few years with colleagues. People are going to be coming at this cold, and we need to very quickly help them understand what this is all about, how it can have an impact, and rightly what levers can they start to pull in their own organizations to help kind of land it. So the challenge and the kind of question I popped in around this first phase of getting enough people adopting it And talking about benefits and creating that flywheel is really going to make or break this. And so we need to be able to have quite visible adoption and be able to talk about these stories until we get to a place where it becomes a bit more self-sustaining. And so that really is the homework question. Sorry, long answer, but you've really lasered in on a critical point.
Yeah, thanks, that's good. And yeah, just want to say thanks to everyone who's worked on the data science so far, because it was really helpful in developing the product.
Well, thanks. I think from scanning the chat, there's not so many questions now. I see there's another Ben with their hand up. Do you have a question, Ben?
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to add to what the other Ben said, which was that I think my experience of trying to do this at Kingston was almost that when you've got the service teams with all their different directories, invariably you'll just give them a spreadsheet to fill out. You don't need to tell them it's a standard. It's like, this is the way it works. Fill in this spreadsheet, because they don't care. They don't necessarily see the value of a standard, and that matters to other people. And I think that's also, I guess, partly why we want suppliers to adopt this as well, because when they when buyers buy a product, this is the way it works. These are the fields that we have in the new products. You need to fill them out. So I think there's a bit of not getting too hung up about some people. Don't need to care that this is a standard. It's a thing in the background that that the techies and others that need to care about it can care about, but service staff don't necessarily need to get too hung up on it. I think basically is the approach that I've taken in the past.
Great, thanks. Yeah, thanks for sharing. So yeah, we have a few minutes left just for a little bit of wrap up and kind of how you can get involved in the project. So thanks so much. I think, yeah, the questions and the discussion are really why we do show and tells like this. So it was really great to have some input. So next, I think Dom, you were going to speak to these slides.
Yeah, so I'm a full stack developer from Poorism. And I'm going to talk about how you can help. So is there any work that you might touch on this standard that you're doing in the past, current, or the future? And is there any risks or dependencies that you don't think you've fully considered? If you want to put in the chat, take a few minutes to think about it, put any messages in the chat, or just call out, now's your chance.
Yeah, share links, put your details. I think we'll definitely be saving this chat afterwards, and I think we can even share it with the group if anyone wants to get some of these comments. So yeah, thanks.
Okay, and the next thing is how to get involved with the project. So there's a couple of links I'd like to share. The first one is a research link. So if you've got any ideas you'd like to feed into the project, here's a research form that you can sign up to. The next one is our newsletter, which is probably going to be a good way of keeping up to date the latest developments on the project. And if you're thinking of adopting the Open Referral UK and like to sign up, your email address on the slide. You can also look at the current website that we've got before we move to the new one. I think that's it from me.
Yep, thanks so much, Dom. So yeah, and then the email address we have up on the slide as well, just in case, I don't know, people didn't have access to the chat. You can also email our researcher, Olu, directly, or fill in the form and then we can get back to you when we're ready for research. So both options are great. And then, yeah, very last, just before we leave, this is what's coming up next. So we'll be, as we mentioned, testing the website concepts and the content that both Ananda and Anne are working on, which is where it'll be great to get some new people's eyes on these. We'll be building, that's important, and running a workshop with some key stakeholders on how we can govern OR UK in the future. We have Robin working on a communications plan and toolkit for us for the future of OR UK as well. And our next show and tell will be in 2 weeks. So you can sign up via the same Eventbrite link for the next show and tell, and we'll send more information out about that if you're on our mailing list. So yeah, that's us for today. And thank you very much, everyone. This was a really great first show and tell from us, and it's great to see so much support for the standards. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.